installment of the Matt Brown Show. If you are watching this live, you would have noticed that we're not in the studio today. We're in fact here in Saint's restaurant in Sandton JHB CBD with none other than the man, the legend, Adam.
Say about legend, but we'll take it.
Adam, welcome to the show, buddy.
Thank you. It's actually an honor. When I got the invite, I was very honored to be invited to the show.
Were you invited, or did you kind of shop around?
Well, I don't know. Maybe Sasha gave them some money. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
thank you.
Sasha's awesome. Well, look, obviously we go back a few years, and it's been really, really amazing. Like to see what Grid specifically is doing on a world stage, let alone what you guys are doing in the local market. So for those of you who've been living in a tree somewhere in the Amazon and you don't know who Grid is, why don't you give us the headline? Who is Grid? What are you guys all about?
Well, listen, I think first and foremost, Grid is a proudly South African agency. We've been very fortunate. We had an ambition 4 years ago to go global. And I think if you said, well, how do you position yourselves now? It's not a case of we're a South African agency who does work internationally on the back end of other clients. I think we're a proudly South African agency that has global ambitions. And, we've landed some really good global clients. So that means, Middle East has been good to us. We've rebranded Michelin out of Paris. Obviously, on the back end of TBWA network, we've been able to quite quickly accelerate our footprint and our global capabilities. So, proudly South African with global ambitions and global proof points 13 years later.
Which, by the way, is a very rare thing.
Yeah, again, I think, to package, I think for me personally, not speaking on behalf of the business, but if you take a company like Adrian Gore, you take Discovery again, such a great South African story that has imported great brands overseas and a great organization, a great philosophy and a great product. So
why are we here? As in, why are we at Saints? So I guess the kind of premise here is about design, right? So, obviously you guys have built an incredible business off this whole concept of design, and I think more recently I've seen things around this idea of a category that you're trying to kind of create and own, which is about investment creative. Yeah. What is that all about?
Look, I think let me start first with design. So design, I think, is a personal... It's a personal love and passion for Nathan. He's founder of the business, and when he founded the business, he founded on the back end of being a unique boutique design agency. At the time, 13 years ago, there wasn't really anyone that could claim that. Nathan, he loves to travel, so I think he's got a lot of his inspiration from traveling and from what he's seen. I think everything around us is designed in some shape or form. What we've done very successfully is we've owned this concept of design, and then we've used that to kind of find what's the meaning behind design. Again, I think the bigger challenge that we've got is you can buy a logo online for $1, via an app for $3 if you're getting ripped off at $10. So for us, it's not the outcome of an identity. It's finding the soul, finding the meaning of why something exists, and then how do you package that from a creative point of view. So again, we're sitting in Saint. It's a great example for us of an ambition and a vision by Gary and Irene and David to say, listen, we want to create an Italian flair, an Italian restaurant with a twist. And I think there are just these amazing little surprises and delights throughout the whole Saint experience. So, and those are all being design-informed, design-led, and again, capturing the essence of something. So again, if you look at Saint as an example, it's the entire experience from when you first experience through an online banner right through to when you're welcomed at the entrance, to the bar itself, to the amazing hologram behind us. And I think it's always, Grid will always pride itself on being a little provocative, a little edgy, a little sexy at times, but more importantly, we like that. I'd say controversial. We like to play in a little bit of a controversial space because I think it's also inherent as us as partners in the business. I don't think any of us are traditional businessmen. We're hustlers, we're businessmen, and we're entrepreneurs first and foremost.
Well, that whole idea of hustle and being a little bit provocative is almost a prerequisite to success today. To your point, if if you're a commodity in any way, shape or form, like you don't really have a business, or not for very long. And so what I really love about, let's just talk about some examples that people might or may not know about. So there's the Slow Lounge, which you did years ago. You've done Marble. I believe the guys who own Marble also own Saints.
Saints, yes.
What other well-known examples can you share?
Probably Slow, like we said, there was just disrupting the category around airport lounges. They're actually an expense to an airline. They're not a profit center. They don't generate cash. And we literally flipped that concept on its head with Slow. Marble, as you've mentioned, was the first initiative. Think in today's times, who can go and invest in a restaurant that seats 250 people? That's a big investment. So again, you needed something meaningful that you were, from a value proposition, from a positioning, from an experience that you were going to give the market, especially in South Africa. You're looking at a steak of 300-400 rand, where you can always get something cheaper. But it found its market. It's been hugely successful. And an extension of that was Saint, in that the experience is everything. I think what I've enjoyed about both restaurants is the fact that I'm a little older. So for me to attend nightclubs is not my thing anymore. But when I get a Marble or Saint experience, it's a destination. Get you early, enjoy the pre-drinks, have an incredible dinner, and then experience the bar afterwards, and socialize and do my thing. So the other probably interesting one for us, which was an investment by the partners of Grid, was Anti-Est, which was in Braamfontein, when Braamfontein was going through its boom, and we wanted to create, the intention behind Anti-Est was just to break the convention of, wasn't a bar, it wasn't a restaurant, it was a space that people could just congregate at, whether it was on weekends, whether it was during the week. I think the weekends turned it into a bar because it was hugely successful. But what was interesting about the concept of Anti-Est, it was a philosophy in itself. Challenging the status quo, learn to unlearn. And then the other big thing is that there was no commercial brands in the bar itself.
Really?
It was built around this idea of craft gins, craft whiskies, and people again gravitated towards that. There was an interesting market. And it became, for me, a real hub in Braamfontein. It became a bit of a pulse, aligned with Neighbour Goods, which just has such a diverse community, diverse bunch of youngsters, old and young, that are going there to experience this energy of inner city. I loved that, and it was gritty.
Yeah, I love this whole idea of experience. Like customer experience is such a big buzzword.
Yeah.
And to be, and that traditionally, although CX kind of applies to the end-to-end customer journey, oftentimes it's misunderstood. And at least what I love about what you guys have done in terms of creating your own category is this whole idea, as you touched on earlier, about make it mean something. Yeah. And really finding the underlying philosophy and, I don't know, what's the DNA of this idea?
Yeah. Again, maybe something I should have said earlier. For me personally, I always challenge the agency, and I challenge the team. You get people that look at design, and you get people that look through design. And for many years, we were a traditional design agency, but I think, again, if we'd remained that, I think we would have been irrelevant and redundant as a business, as an entity, because of the way the world has evolved and the use of apps and all that. But when we started to look through design, it meant that we actually really had to consider this customer experience. We had to consider every single touch point. So, a big differentiator for us now is that people are saying, but listen, you guys are doing FMB above the line campaigns, you're doing, you're playing in a traditional space. Yeah, from a channel point of view, I agree we're playing in a traditional space. But going back to how do you express the DNA, the philosophy of an organization at every possible touch point, whether it's at the branch, whether it's at the bar, whether it's in a boardroom, whether it's through card design, credit card design, whether it's through a retail mobile store. You need to bring that philosophy and DNA to life. And I think that's where Grid has been really, really good, is that we don't see one size fits all. I think we're our own worst enemy, is that we design until our fingers bleed, in that we design specifically for that touch point. And again, slow is a great representation of everything is considered in that space. Everything is thought through, and everything just ties back to the concept of slow.
Yeah. By the way, one massive example we haven't touched on is the ABSA rebrand.
Yes.
So you guys were intimately involved in that, right?
Yeah. So again, it was an interesting project in that there was, where ABSA and Barclays were at from a corporate point of view, it had a huge amount. There were many people that were watching what the next move was going to be, and I think for us, when we were working on ABSA, we went through the design, the rebrand process. Obviously, as we launched, everyone became a pretty credible designer and had a lot to say about the actual logo itself.
Hashtag OpenServe, hashtag just saying.
Yeah.
That guy.
But I think what is important was, again, how did we, for us it was, how do you create something magical that 40,000 employees can feel like they're a part of? How did they own that? And I think, when I say we started to look through design, a big asset to our business was when we got Yatish Nasi on board as Chief Experiential Officer. And what he really did for us was he allowed us to look at things in a very different perspective. And when we threw out, listen, how do you launch probably one of South Africa's oldest trusted banks? How do you rebrand it, relaunch it in the 21st century? The drone show was it was an incredible opportunity. What was interesting, the drone show wasn't something we would have ordinarily stumbled upon. It came through our insights department, it came through our insights team that's seen what was done at Sochi. And I think for us, the other thing that's starting to underpin creating philosophy and meaning behind brands is, what insights are they grounded in? What triggers certain people's responses to things, or the way people are behaving about something. And that whole drone show was very much around, how do we give a bank that's been around for many years, that then got taken over by the likes of a Barclay, that wants to now claim its South Africanness, its African-nacity back. How do you give them something memorable? And a drone show was an Africa first.
So Africanacity and this drone show. So the drone show, from my understanding, it was, how many drones were there? Like
300.
300 drones. Okay. So the thing, all I noticed was there was just this massive noise. There was no, literally in every other single sector, there was no other communication that was basically visible. It was like a complete nationwide takeover, as you say, for this rebranding of ABSA, but more importantly, an idea behind it, right? That idea was Africanacity. How did you guys land on that? And then more broadly, can you explain the importance of having an underlying category thought behind a brand?
Look, I think the journey with Africanacity, and I have to again be completely honest, is that Grid was never we weren't the curators of Africanacity.
Oh, was it Draft?
It was Draft FCB.
Okay.
But I think again, what was quite important about the rebrand was, it was never just Grid and the client. There were a number of stakeholders involved, and I think for any entrepreneur, for any agency, for any small business or big business alike, I think the world is no longer just revolve around you. I think you have to be open to collaborating, whether you like it or not. Matt, how competitive the agency space is, and I think with David Wingfield and his team that were leading the rebrand, they did really well in navigating how all their agencies work together. So Draft were the guardians of Africanacity, but again, in the absence of having any underlying positioning, it would have just been another rebrand. It would have just, I think, been another drone show, or the first drone show, but without any real context.
Yeah. But I think, looking back at Slow, looking back at Saints, etc., I mean, there's still an idea behind it, right? That's expressed through design, visually, etc. Let's use Saints as an example. So behind us, we've got this pretty insane backdrop bar story with projections on it, and it's like a Well, I don't even know. You explain what this is.
Yeah. So again, Saint was quite exciting because we knew what our capabilities were and what we could deliver on marble. And when Gary, Irene, and David came to us about Saint, it was like, listen, guys, we got to take it to the next level. Now, how do you take it to the next level? And I think for us, it's not aesthetically, it's how do you bring a philosophy and a meaning to life, and that's where you use design and you use brand to take it to the next level. So again, the whole idea behind Saint is saint or sinner, and I think we have a saint and a sinner inside of each and every one of us.
I'm a saint, buddy. There's no sinning going on. Yeah, speak for yourself.
Well, maybe you go to the restaurant, you come to the bar, and it's a sinful experience. The cocktail. So again, I think the saint versus sinner idea is we have this two side to us, and it was how did you just bring that to life? And for us, the saint as a space became the canvas. That was the first and foremost the really big thing for us. And then how do you just activate? And that's why I said I used the word surprise and delight, because it's just, did I see that or didn't I really see that? Or everyone, and I think what's interesting about brands and design today is everyone has their own interpretation of it. What I love about creativity, but it's what I hate about it, is it's subjective. And some people get it and some people don't get it. And I just love the controversy and the juxtaposition in that, because you can, some people really appreciate it, whilst others are not really, they're not honed to look around what's around them and what meaning they can take from something.
Yeah. In the tech space that Digital Kung Fu plays in, one of the interesting observations, by the way, coming back from London Tech Week a couple of weeks ago, to your earlier points about collaboration, like in the tech sector, especially in Europe, everyone's talking to everyone. It's like, hey, come check out my AI product. Come look up my skirts and let's share and collaborate. And there's very much a sense of community. I don't find that that's necessarily true here. It's like you don't want to talk to your competitors here. And then also in the tech space, that's really become really apparent is that we've overvalued technology and we've undervalued creativity. And it seems to me that the kind of baton sits firmly with the creative community. So obviously you're one of the leaders here, as we've discussed. Yeah. Let's talk about creativity. What does it mean to be creative today? We'll get into Qatar and all the other international brands that you work with, but looking globally, what does it mean to be creative today? Why does it matter?
I think, again, if you take how we built our business, and probably for me the success behind the business, besides, and it's something that we've debated, we will always, at the heart of what we do is what we call creative excellence. It's about using creativity to literally give the world more meaning and purpose, but also just make it more beautiful. I read an amazing quote the other day where just your life should be your own masterpiece. And we have amazing things now with Instagram and Twitter that can show how perfect and beautiful our life is.
So perfect.
But I think I've always taken that to heart. I think and we've applied that same philosophy where I think you've heard it, Matt, where we've got make a piece of content informative, make it inspiring, make it educational, but most of all make it beautiful. Spend some time on the craft and the design and the thought behind it. So, but to get back to the point on creativity, what's made our business successful is we've never necessarily looked in category to propel ourselves forward. One of the bigger benchmarks for us has been the tech industry. It's been the startup category, and the reason why we've looked at it is because it's totally unconventional from a culture point of view, from a value proposition point of view, from a commercial point of view, from a revenue model point of view, and it was born in the 21st century, so it's grown up in this age, and that means it doesn't have this legacy behind it. So we've adopted a lot of those principles and models in our agency itself. We've looked at different remuneration models. What does innovation mean, and how does innovation collide with design? How does it intersect with creativity? A lot of the industry is nervous around the impact of tech startups or the tech industry and technology itself, we've always embraced it. I think that we're at infant stages of embracing technology, to be honest. In terms of enabling our creativity to a whole nother level. There are some really amazing stuff that's coming out of Cannes where, design agencies, creative agencies have embraced technology and doing incredible innovations that benefit the end user, that benefit the consumer. Dubai did a great piece of design on a washing powder with an innovative way of using the washing powder when you buy a garment. So you buy the garment and you literally drop this washing powder sachet straight in, and it's just it's a simple thing. It's not it's not beautiful, but it's just a really clever way of bringing technology, design, and creativity to benefit the consumer. That's a big thing for me. Creativity, I think it still will be the one thing that the world will continue to embrace, because we're the originators of creativity. There's a big debate between creativity and AI. Will the two ever marry? Will they live in harmony? Will they continue to fight for the same space? We have our view. I think creativity will always sit with us, and we'll use AI to enhance it, to take it, make it exponential, take it further.
Yeah. So I think, what's interesting about what you said is kind of our category that we evangelizing is the whole idea of storytelling technology. So there's a missing acronym there. So storytelling for technology, meaning that, tech companies are great at tech, not so great at getting their propositions across and getting the right message in front of the right prospects, etc. And so I agree with you. I think you can't ignore technology. It's like every business has to be technology enabled. 1, 2, probably needs to be a data and AI business at some point in the near future. Yeah. In order to remain relevant. So then you say to yourself, okay, well then what is the role of creativity as it relates to that context? And that's the missing piece, because take storytelling, for instance, it's like if you know how to tell a story, it's formulaic. There's many formulas that are available to that. Equally, in your case, I suppose that there's a process that you guys follow as it relates to the delivery of an idea, whether it's Saints or, Marble or Slow Lounge or Michelin or Qatar, etc. Yeah. Can you walk us through your creative process, just headline?
Yeah. So, the process used to be I say used to be. We've always grounded it in a very simple, what we call 3 I's, no different to many people, which is insight, idea, and implementation. So, but I think what we have started to do is, when you start to saying, listen, we want to, David Ogilvy, he created the Ogilvy way. TBWA has created this tool that has become their philosophy in terms of disruption. For Grid, our North Star is about, creating meaning in everything that we do, and hence why we framed it as the Make It Mean Something company. But what underpins this is that statement you said in the beginning of around what is investment creative. So investment creative is creating value through meaning. Now, if you then replayed that back and said, well, how does that work through the process? The first and foremost is for us to get to understand the soul. If it's Qatar, understand the soul of this country. What's its essence? What is it? Where has it been to know where it needs to go? That's the first thing. FMB, what does FMB really want to be known for? What does it really want to stand for? So we need to succinctly capture that and distill that into a line, a word, or a statement. And it needs to be a bold statement. Second thing is the fact that we've integrated various creative disciplines into the ideation process. So I'm talking about 3D renderers, I'm talking about developers, we're talking about traditional art directors and copywriters, designers, we're talking about architects. We've now literally got most of those capabilities I've mentioned as part of our creative team, and that then goes through this ideation process. And the ideation process is a fucking rigorous, ball-breaking, intense one. So, Nathan believes that and it's Rob Schwartz in New York, he says, listen, be soft on the people, but be hard on the work. And that ideation process is very much that. So you can't take that process offensively because it's rigorous. It has to be rigorous because clients they're expecting you to derive value out of your creative process to solve a business problem or a challenge or to create something memorable and magical. So the ideation process is quite integrated, multi-skilled and disciplined. Then what happens is, how do you take a simple philosophy and idea and then execute that across multiple channels? And that's why I said, what does it look like in a physical space? What would it look like in a print magazine? What would it look like in a train station? What would it look like on a billboard? What would it look like on a TV screen in an airport? What would it look like a TV screen in an airplane? You need to ensure that you can execute that idea across multiple platforms, and then you overlay what would the digital experience, because digital allows you to be, for me, it's the most exciting space because you add real dimension to an idea, and it informs user experience, all these different things. But again, what is the real outtake? The fourth part for us that we've introduced from a process point of view is what we call automation and scalability. Now that is for us where technology has had the biggest, most profound impact on our business. Is I've got a global brand like Destination Qatar. These guys are operating they've got 10 markets that they're operating in terms of actual offices, and they then execute a global campaign in 27 countries. The biggest challenge you're going to have with that is consistency if it's a global positioning campaign, is consistency and execution of this brand. So that's where for us automation plays a big role. We're now looking at developing our own technology that allows us to take a brand and execute it across multiple platforms, touch points, and it is perfectly executed. The second thing is the scalability overnight. So when you say a client says, listen, I've got 27 airports, each airport has up from 5 to 12 touch points, 10 countries, each of those countries have got over 10 different out-of-home executions, including Times Square, Canary Wharf. It's a complex job in itself. Now, many years ago, we used to have a team that would execute each one. Now, we get to a point where I think it's driven by human intelligence, human insight, and a technology that allows us to consistently execute it. And the client says, listen, I want it done in 3 weeks.
Yeah,
so again, and again, it's not something I think that we've perfected, but it's for us a big focal point around this automation and scalability overnight is what makes the likes of Uber, Airbnb is what made them very successful. They just immediately could penetrate every market, every corner of the earth.
Yeah. So I've got an interesting question for you. So, we're a startup. I think we're always going to be one, regardless of how big we're going to get. I mean, it's just nuts what we just...
I think but the startup is a mentality.
But that's sort of, 100%.
It's a mentality, and I love the startup mentality, and I don't think anyone, if that's the way you've come from, never lose that, because it keeps you hungry, it keeps you thinking. There's no level of complacency or mediocrity. There's no room for it to creep in.
It's funny because literally for me as the chief excitement officer.
Yeah.
Mav loves that one. Basically, everybody loves that one. It's not mine. I stole it. So
it's Robin Sharma, isn't it?
Yeah. It's Alon Ray's actually.
Okay, yeah.
But anyway, I mean, it's like every day I come to like 8 a.m. whenever I get to the office. I sit down and I want to throw everything away and start again, because markets move. If you're talking creativity, when does that start and when does that stop?
Look, let me tell you, we do the same thing. We're a 13-year-old business. I think at 13, you can safely say you're becoming of age. The profits have grown, the client base has grown, the team have grown, they've also evolved. But I think probably a lot of our staff's biggest frustration is at times it feels like you're starting over. You're starting over from a process point of view. You're starting over from a philosophy point of view. You're starting over from a culture point of view. And I think probably culture is the one thing that's remained consistent. But our operating model, I always say to the guys, it's like an iPhone. If you don't reboot it, it becomes stale and it becomes old. And you need to reboot your company's operating model. Try stay true to your philosophy, your moonshot, and your culture, because those are the things that I think will hold it together through good times and bad times.
I love that idea. I mean, you got to upgrade your firmware, right?
Yeah.
It's like a software update. You run differently. Markets move. Clients want different things, right?
Yeah.
I want to come back to culture in a second, but going back to the whole startup sort of context, when does a startup engage with the likes of a company like Grid? When do you hand over your story to a third party? And I'll tell you why why I want to explore this with you. So Larry Ellison, Oracle man, the founder. Okay, so they're like I don't even know, like something like a $500 million dollar company. Sorry, they're a big fuck off monster, right? Larry Ellison still writes the ad copy for the New York Times ad today. Sure. When they were a startup, they spent over half their revenue on advertising to remain competitive in that market.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So, but I mean, it's just fascinating. I don't know if you know of a guy called Rick Bennett. He's called the ad man assassin or something like that. Worked with like Mark Benioff at Salesforce, Oracle, and many, many others. So in essence, it's the idea that you handing over your story to someone else. When do you do that, and under what context?
You know, Matt, I don't have the exact answer. I can only tell you what we've experienced. So we've actually got one company. It's a Silicon Valley company that is a startup. It's an amazing product, and we met them right before they had a name and they had an idea of what their product offering was going to be, and they've engaged us from the onset, and we've actually, we took a stake in the business as opposed to charging them the conventional fee offering. So, again, and that translates for us into this investment creative, because it's actually it's a product offering that we firmly believe in. It's around the rehabilitation of being more preventative rehabilitation of knee operations, back issues, anything to do with joints, and it's called Rombot, and it's just around this idea of autonomous joint healing. So if you look after yourself and you have the right products, then you're in a better space to heal yourself. But more importantly, how is that driven by data and analytics? That's the differentiation. So it has this amazing, called a Rombot device that sits on each of these products, and that is feeding data. So if you've had a knee, doesn't have to be a double knee replacement, a knee operation, it literally, when you come out of that operation, you're at, let's say, 15 degrees motion. In order to drive again, you need to be at 90 degrees. So what this does is you're literally finding yourself going to a fucking therapist trying to rehabilitate yourself, and it could take a week, it could take 3 weeks, it could take 3 months. My dad happened to have it, and he's 75, and it's taken him a year to get to 90 degrees. So what this does is it instantaneously is feeding information on your progress through to an app that is then aggregating all of the data and then sharing this insight back with your doctor, with your physiotherapist, with your personal trainer.
In real time.
Incredible product. So the business launches 1st of September. So to answer your question, they onboarded us from the onset. It like any relationship, there's been a few challenges because they are a startup. They're so responsive. Their business and their model is moving every single day when they're prospecting investors. The plant is out in China. Every day something's happening. And I think the biggest challenge we've got as an agency is keeping up with those demands.
Yeah.
Then we've had other tech startups approach us where they've basically got the Series A funding, and they've gone through the process and say, listen, we've got a bit of money to create a brand. Ordinarily, that's not where we'd want to enter it, because I think a lot of the hard yards and the thinking is done. So now you're just executing. And for us, if you go back to our philosophy of creating meaning, we want to be there from the onset. But again, the tech startup mentality is invest in what you need and not ordinarily in everything because it's cool. And, so ask yourself, why do you need these components, whether it's the brand itself, whether it's hiring the right talent or it's a website? Be very clear on what is your real focal point.
Yeah. So let's go culture, right? So a 13-year-old company, I think culture for me is like everything. like it's the whole game. It's like, with respect, fuck design, fuck brand, all that shit comes after. It's about your people, and making sure that you're all clear around what that North Star is, and working together to get there faster, basically. I've obviously met and worked with a lot of the Grid guys. What have you done to facilitate a high performance culture like the one clearly that exists at Grid?
Look, I think first and foremost, finding the right people has been the hardest thing. And at the end of the day, our people are our commodity. That's where our IP sits. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, Grid has never really attracted a great talent. We've actually always... We've had very senior people come into the business, but it's actually never worked really. What we've done is we've nurtured talent from a very young age. And Nathan, he was quite profound in that he always chose one youngster and made them a shareholder under 30 years old. And he's groomed them. So great example of that is Paul Hinch. He's been with Nathan for 15 years. Nathan saw a great talent in him 15 years ago, gave him shares, and Paul has now grown himself into be our creative design partner. He's done a similar thing now with Janil Kandasamy, who's he worked his way in the business to now be a shareholder, and his contribution, is invaluable. So again, I think it's, the first thing is, I think, give people accountability first and foremost. Establish with people what your intentions are, that you are a high-performance culture. Now, some people like that, some people don't like that. Secondly, high-performance culture means that everybody has a role, and a specific role to play in order to maintain being high-performance. So I always use a great analogy. A GTI takes 6 cylinders, all right? If one cylinder is not firing, it's just a Golf. And for it to maintain that performance of being a GTI, it needs every person to play a role. Similar to an F1 team, I've got one of my favorite talks, which is From Good to Great, is around the analogy of an F1 team, the number one F1 team versus an agency model, and there are a lot of similarities. But what's different, I think, on the F1 team is they invest a huge amount of time in the engineering, and they're constantly refining, constantly tweaking, could we do it better? Could we be faster? Can we be sexier? Can we attract better sponsors, more funding? And they're constantly in that mode. So, and then again, who's the best driver to drive this car? So we've again looked at a category. It's been a big, for me, a big lighthouse in terms of what are the similarities. The other thing is, an F1 team, I think a driving steering wheel itself has over 340 components. The design process can have 1,000 components to it. The traffic process has so many different components. And when those are all working together, you have success. When they're not working together, I think you get good, you get okay, and I think you've got to establish what is it that you want to be and why.
I'd love to one day have the opportunity to see like a F1 team come to you and say, please redesign our steering wheel.
Look, first thing is, can
make it mean something.
Listen, we could probably reduce it in its size, but it's a complex business. I think our industry is as complex, and I think where a lot of the complexity comes in, it's people.
Yeah,
our business is driven by people, not processes, not systems, platforms. People are complex in their own right.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So you're a fantastic PR lady over there who's eyeballing me every time. She gets nervous every time I speak. But you're doing some cause work. So obviously we've just had our elections. Yes. Yeah, and I'd just really like to get into that. So, I mean, it's quite brave, to be fair. It's like when you're a startup, to your earlier point, you're a startup, you can go and do whatever the hell you want because you can, and hey, if I lose a couple of clients, big deal. But when you're dealing with like Qatar government and is it Airways or government? It's the government,
Qatar,
right?
Tourism Council, yeah.
So I mean, you're dealing with these massive brands. So if you're going to take a stand about something that is in any way, shape, or form political, that is provocative, to use the exact words that you used, why are you doing this? I'm going to call it cause-driven creative or cause-related work. And can you walk us through around the elections exactly what your kind of process and kind of intended outcome was?
Yeah, so I think, again, to answer the thing as a business, part of going back to our culture is we have this internal rallying cry called G in culture, which is a hashtag, and it frames a lot of the activities and things that we do with our staff. And for me, G in culture really is a platform for self-expression, personal growth, and self-development. And what we mean by that is, I think as a business, if we don't stand for something, we'll fall for anything or nothing, first and foremost. So that's the starting point. The second thing is that, talking specifically about that campaign, as South Africans, we expect our government and our leadership in terms of the president to take us to the next level. But as a private sector and as a citizen of South Africa, we can't complain that it's their job and they're not doing it properly if we don't do anything about it. That's the second point. So for me, we embarked on this campaign. We hadn't originally set out to do it. So two of our creatives in Yanni Labaskachny, who's a creative director, and Lillian, who's a young talented writer recently at Grid, they came to us with this idea and said, listen, guys, we're worried about the elections in that I'm not sure who we're going to vote for. Do you vote for the man? Or do you vote for the party? And those were two distinctly separate issues. So one, you're voting with your heart for voting for the man, and the second one, you're voting for the party, probably begrudgingly. So the guy said, listen, what we want to do is we need everyone in South Africa to vote. And we want to encourage them to vote. So that was the starting point for the campaign. The second thing is they came to us, I think, quite nervously to say, listen, is there something you'd be interested in? And we jumped at it. We jumped at it because a year ago, when the country was really down in terms of our hope where Zuma was going, was Ramaphosa going to take over, there was just nothing there in the fuel tank for South Africans. South Africans thrive on unity, we thrive on success through sport, we thrive on success through entrepreneurship, and we all love our country. So a year ago when we embarked on the Hope Joanna campaign, that was just to raise hope that there is hope. We've had a difficult past, but that is informed where we're going as a future. A year later, we went to election time. We needed to say something that encouraged people, and I think what was most important about it, the entire campaign was funded by Grid, and we were proud of that. So when we engaged a lot of the media, whether it was out of home, whether it was the media, print houses, newspapers, a lot of the out of home, you can ask, Sash turned us down.
Really?
Wanted nothing to do with it. A lot of the print guys turned us down. The Citizen came, and then Sunday Times were like, guys, you can run that ad as long as you say there this was funded by Grid Worldwide, which we were very happy to do. So I think, again, go back to my original point. We want to stand for something. We'll continue to be to build our team in being very vocal about our circumstance, about our leadership, because we have a right as the private sector to make things right, to create the future we want for ourselves and our children.
Well, let's talk about the future. Are you optimistic or are you a realist? I'll tell you why, because the rhetoric and the narrative, especially in the guys who listen to this show, it's like entrepreneurs, founders, SME owners, there's loads of C-suite, and then the general public. The sentiment's not fucking good, right? And I commend you massively for having the cojones to go and do what you did. Yeah. I think it was necessary. But the sentiment's very, very bad. To your point, around Cyril and leadership and, what's going on in government, and, there's nothing's being done to stimulate SME growth, which is basically the bedrock of our economy. There was a scary stat, Adam, that was shared with me by my wife, funnily enough. There was a Fin24 article, came out like 2 weeks ago. The number of insolvencies and liquidations in the SME sector within the South African economy has increased by 53% in the last 12 months.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean? Like that for me that's the sort of thing that keeps me up at night. And of course there's always exceptions to that narrative. So our company being one, Blackbeard Technologies being another, there are obviously always exceptions. But on the whole, it's pretty damn miserable, right?
Yeah.
What would you like to say to those founders out there who are like, what the hell?
You know, first and foremost, I am optimistic. I think that South Africa has a level of resilience that somehow we get through things. I think, and again, little things that really resonate with me are, I come from a sporting family, so I find sport unifies us in such incredible ways. So the Proteas' dismal performance at the World Cup just couldn't have come at a worse time, because we feel it as South Africans. Because if we were progressing into the semi-finals, there's a level of excitement. There's a level of, South Africans are overachievers in our own right. That's why we've always punched above our weight. So that couldn't have come at a worse time, but luckily we got the World Cup rugby to hopefully pin our hopes on. So let's see. But
come on, boys, get in there.
Yeah, I'm optimistic. Please watch out for the FMB Spring Box campaign. It's breaking
really?
soon.
Is that coming soon?
It's beautiful.
Really?
You know what? I think it's one of the most meaningful campaigns that we at Grid have done in a long, long time.
Great.
So watch out for that. Super exciting. I think it launches 7th of July.
Great.
And obviously MTN's, their campaigns broke. So optimistic in the sense that I think as South Africans we have a level of resilience. I think our biggest challenge is how deep are those tanks of resilience still. That's the big thing. The second thing is I'm a realist in that currently things are pretty tough. They really are, and we've seen it with the way clients are engaging us. And just be clear, it's not just locally things are tough. The world is tough at the moment. It's a cutthroat place. They just at times I think there's a lot of uncertainty. There are things that are happening that affect all of us. So it's not just South Africa that's feeling it. But I think in order to if you're a startup, you're a founder, you're an ambitious entrepreneur that has ambitions of opening your own business, I think when it becomes like this, there needs to be a culture of discipline. And I've always go back to discipline for me personally. When things go awry, I realize it goes awry because I'm not focused. I'm trying to do too much. And now, even in our business, we've got to instill this culture of discipline. And I think the best example of that, you would take a team like the All Blacks. And they built their performance on discipline. They built it on respect. They built it on a vision. So this is a time to consolidate. As an individual, you're going to have a lot of people looking at you saying, well, as the leader in the business, what are you going to do next? So you either show up on the day and tell them, or fucking run and don't look back. You choose what it is that you're going to be. So the discipline then comes out in your ethic, your engagement of people, what you want people to take out, like you mentioned. Well, being clear on what your expectations are, what your North Star is, what your vision is. So, yeah, I think at the moment, don't lose hope. But be very focused. Only way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time. And I think as a country, that's where we very much are. Yeah. Let's take it 1 week at a time.
Yeah. I think I'm going to add another quote into the hatcher. So basically it's, if you're not building a community, you're a commodity. Yeah. I love that fucking quote. And the thing with entrepreneurship is that there is a community. If you feel like you're on your own, but you're not. It's like there's a design community, there's a storytelling community, there's a technology community, there's an SME community. Like reach out and ask for help. Yeah. It's like I think a lot of us as South Africans culturally, we're just too proud.
Yeah,
we don't want to ask for help.
Yeah, agreed. Look, I think, and I must commend you. I think your show does that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Matt, so many times, even when I was in Qatar. It was just moving your entire family, your entire being there. At times it got tough for us. So, and then your podcast would pop up and you'd have, so again, I think this message that it's not just for startups, it's not just for entrepreneurs. Your message is for everybody, no matter where you are in the world. And that's why when I say, I was truly honored to say, listen, come on to the show, because you've always had some great pearls of wisdom that have worked for me on numerous occasions.
Amazing. Crap, that's so great to hear.
So, very much
so. Means a lot coming from you, dude. I mean, I got huge respect for you and Nathan and the team
very
there. So let's wrap this up. Why do you do what you do? What gets you out of bed in the morning?
You know what? I invest in things that that firstly will challenge me as a being. I've always been very ambitious. Like I said, I keep using sports as an analogy in my own life. I came from a very sporty family. So what gets me up in the morning about this industry is it's so unpredictable. Today I'm talking to a tech startup out of Silicon Valley. Then I'm in a meeting with, a banking client. Then we're having conversations with you. And I think what personally, I love creativity, but it's not the end all and be all for me personally. I'm not a creative, I'm not a strategist. I'm a businessman that has an inherent belief in people's, what people can be. And that's why if you say to me, what do you think your real role at Grid is? I really try and look after the culture and I look after the people. Because that's where, for me, the magic lies. So for me, the people, my team get me out of bed. My children are just incredible at how, there is a level of innocence and naivety that I just have so much, I love. It just always keeps me on my toes. At Grid, we're prone to always wearing black. And my daughter the other day saw me wear a red coat and she goes, "Oof, Dad, I'm not sure about that." And she's 3 years old. So they even pick up on our own behaviors. So
I wore black for you today, buddy.
I see that, and I didn't.
And look what you've done to me.
But I think, most importantly, I love the fact that what we do is so diverse. We're dealing with people, we're dealing with clients, we're dealing with the good times, the bad times. So I get out of bed every morning because I honestly believe that we can change the world one brand at a time. I genuinely believe that, and that is our mission. And as CEO, that's the path that I'll continue to go forth on. And, we can spread our magic. Creativity is our superpower, and we're blessed with it.
Adam Byars, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you so much. Cool. Thank you.
Cheers, dude.
Thank you.